EMR is a great challenge and a matter of concern for HIMSS. EMR adoption lags behind other industry sectors significantly for the standardization. The various known causes for this is cost, resistance to change, fear of avoiding technology. So now our next speaker, Mr. Devesh Rajadhyax, who leads the R&D Center in 21st Century Informatics, will now speak upon adoption of EMR as a great challenge. He is a postgraduate in engineering and is working in healthcare IT since 1997. He is the innovation guru in 21st Century Informatics and has a major role in bringing 21st century in the top 5 healthcare IT companies in India. Mr. Devesh argues that traditional business software and their approach of looking at IT systems are not the way that now we need to work on. He brings a new evolutionary approach to handling the life cycle of EMR system. This approach is well supported by the advancement in cloud computing technology and emergence of SaaS model in healthcare industry. A wide acceptance of this evolutionary approach can bring higher states of EMR to healthcare organizations. I now call upon Mr. Devesh Rajadhyax.
Hello, and thank you very much for coming. I will begin with a report on the electronic medical records that I happen to read. Now, this was a report from a high-level committee commissioned by the US Department of Defense and to investigate the state of EMR systems in the US military hospitals. Now, I remember the line where it says that the doctors leaving the military because of the frustration with the EMR system. And this is a system that has cost the Department of Defense around $4 billion. So, we know that the EMR systems can be very expensive, and we also know that they can invoke very sharp emotional response. Now that we know this, we can let us have a brief look at what EMR is. Electronic medical records. As the patient, every hour the patient spends in the hospital, it gives rise to medical information about the patient. This includes, of course, the prescriptions, the examinations, orders for surgeries, and clinical notes made by physicians, consultants, surgeons, images in radiology, reports in laboratory, reports in radiology, and so much more. This is all EMR, and it plays a very important role as far as healthcare is concerned. Of course, it is very important in the diagnosis and treatment of the patient. I mean, the clinical information, if it is available electronically, it adds enormous value to the treatment of the patient. But EMR is also important for healthcare as a whole. This data will aid the medical research, and it also plays a big role in improvement of public health. Agencies like insurance companies, like statutory bodies, they can use this data to protect the interest of the patient and also that of the healthcare givers. Let me tell you something that that will highlight the importance of EMR like nothing else. In the US, the government gives an incentive to a physician every year, something like $40,000 a year, if they can prove meaningful use of EMR. So that's how EMR is important to the US government. But despite of this incentive, the adoption of EMR still remains in the US. And of course, in the emerging economies like us, the usage of EMR is minuscule. Of course, there are many reasons for this. Reasons like initial cost, the resistance to change, the lack of time, between the patient and doctor interactions, and so many more. But what I will be talking about here today is a factor, of course, that has to do with the way IT systems treat the EMR life cycle, the life cycle of the EMR software. Now, what is this approach that IT systems adopt? It is nothing different. It is an approach that is taken for all business software, like ERP, CRM, and the applications used in healthcare. They all use the same approach, which looks something like this. That there is a rapid expansion of functionality, growth of functionality during the phase called implementation. So during implementation, based on the analysis of user needs, the system grows rapidly in functionality. The way it happens is through custom development, maybe from scratch, or the customization and configuration of existing software. Now this is a well-established approach, okay, and very elaborate methodologies are available to make the implementation more and more effective. We have so many well-known and trend-turning products which provide powerful features to do the necessary customization, the configuration, so as to bring about this growth in the function. But we must remember that this heavily depends on the analysis of the user needs, what the users want, and this is this is where the characteristics of to EMR and especially its users, they pose a challenge. What are the characteristics? Now, EMR is essentially clinical data. It's medical information, and so it cannot be as standard as the business information that we usually have. Okay, and it varies from institute to institute, hospital to hospital, from practitioner to practitioner, and even within the same institute, it varies from one workflow to another. Okay, it changes over time as the medical practices evolve. So the analysis of this is very complex. But more importantly, let us have a look at the users. Who are the users of EMR? These are the clinicians, doctors, consultants, surgeons, and these users, they cannot dedicate the attention and time that is required for a detailed analysis of their information needs. Their attention obviously is on treating the patient. And so, while they are able to give a basic information, they cannot get involved into a rigorous analysis of this. So while the implementation approach is very good at building functionality, the functionality is built on a weak base. But what happens after the system is put into operation is something very interesting. As the system is put into operation, the users realize what they actually need. When they see they get something to work with, they now start getting ideas about what is the gap between what they said earlier and what they really need. Okay? And more importantly, they now start getting the real hang of what can be done next. You have something to work with, and it is always easy to work out the next small step. Now this is nothing unusual. You know, the principle of adjacent possible. Now this is the principle that was put forward by the scientist Kaufman to basically explain the beginning of life. But it has been successfully used to explain various other phenomena, and it fits into our paradigm, the phenomena of EMR very well. The doctors, the clinicians, they get something to work with, and they can always work out the next small step to take. So this is a kind of golden period after the system comes into operation. After the users start using the operation, it's a kind of golden period in which the users actually start suggesting the design of the system. They really start getting the hang into what they want now and even what they would like to do next. Fortunately, as our EMR users are experiencing their best time, the IT system which we are using has entered into its area of weakness. What is this weakness? The system which was so good at building the functionality during implementation now shows a resistance to the further building of functionality through modifications, because now it comes across as changes, as modifications, and so the system starts showing a resistance, which I prefer to call as the resistance to modification. Now, the resistance to modification is visible. You can see it, you can observe it by two factors: the cost of modification and the generation time. Okay, generation time is the time which the time elapsed from the user expresses a need until the functionality is actually made available to the user. Now these two things, they start going off. The reasons are many. They include things like software entropy, software aging, and also things like diminishing knowledge of the people who are doing the modification. Reasons are many, but the impact is that the system becomes more and more difficult to modify. This resistance, it goes up with time, which means that the longer time has elapsed from implementation, the resistance is more, it is more difficult, and also disastrously it increases with every modification, which means the more modifications are done to the system, the more difficult the system is to modify. So what happens? As a result, the small modifications to the system are no longer encouraged. Because the cost and the time cannot be justified. Instead, what is preferred is that another bump, another big amount of change, implementation. Now this enters into a negative side. The small changes which the users can suggest, can do, are not encouraged, and the big changes which probably can be done, but the users find it difficult to specify those changes. Negative cycle where less number of modifications are done. Because there are less modifications, there are less number of further ideas, as we have seen, and system goes into a mode where the modifications are no longer done. This is a time when the system becomes outdated, and for the new EMR needs, then the system doesn't remain suitable. Okay, so this is something that impacts the adoption of EMR by the clinicians very much, because the clinicians could have got the system that they wanted, but because of a characteristic, because of a phenomena, it doesn't happen. So now that we know that it impacts the adoption of EMR, what can we do as IT systems? We should adopt an evolutionary approach to the growth of complexity, the growth of functionality. That is a gradual growth instead of a giant leap, a giant step. Now this is something that is, something that is similar to the growth of complexity in the organs of the living organisms. For example, if you take the eye, it has evolved from a very simple organ to the most complex organs that we see today. Or the echolocation by the bats. I mean, they can see in the dark using the ultrasound method, or of the bird. All these complex things that we see in the nature, they have evolved from simple beginnings into very complex systems that we see today. It was a computer scientist called John Gall who has written in his interesting book called The Bible of Systems. What he writes is that all complex systems that work have evolved from simple systems that work. Okay, so we have to adopt that approach here to the life cycle of the EMR system. What will it mean? What will such a thing? We will need two things to do this. Number one, we will need an IT infrastructure that can grow gradually. And we will need a software that encourages growth through a gradual growth instead of a giant step. As far as the first is concerned, the cloud computing model is ideal for this, because unlike the on-premises model where growth has to come in discrete steps, the cloud computing is where you can have a gradual growth of system, the capabilities. Okay? And as far as software is concerned, we need a different class of software. Okay, something that I like to call as a highly evolvable software or highly evolvable business software, HEBS. Now, how will this software be? This software encourages a gradual growth, which means what it does is that the resistance to small modifications is very small. So the cost of modification and the generation time are very small for small modifications. Number two, that this resistance doesn't go up appreciably as the time passes and as more modifications are done. So with these two things, evolutionary infrastructure and software, we can actually get something, a system, an EMR system that will encourage small and frequent changes. The transformation that this can bring is that as the penetration of EMR goes deeper and deeper into more and more places of the healthcare, we can reap all the benefits of enhanced patient care, the advancement in medical research, and improvement in public health. So all benefits because of higher adoption of EMR, and of course so many more. So I would conclude with a brief summary saying that the existing approaches of IT systems to EMR are not suitable. We need to adapt an approach that can be called as evolutionary approach, which can help us in enhancing the adoption of EMR in healthcare, and which can be, which can bring about transformation in the healthcare. So, saying thanks and any questions.